Listen, your big breaking TV. Welcome to prime time, bitch.
Welcome back, everyone, to Master of the Universe Horror Podcast, and this week we're talking about 2010's Insidious, and this one's got a hell of a cast. But before we get into it, Christopher J, man, how you doing, dude?
It's all good, man. It's all good.
So before we get into all the actors of this film, we were talking about it, before the show. Paranormal, it's our thing. Am I right?
Fuck yeah, dude. That shit gets in my head, makes me sleep with all the lights on. Oh, wait, I do that anyway. Never mind.
Yeah. This one, when it came out, it was funny because for like the longest time in the 2000s before 2010, 2000 to 2009, there was like a ton of movies all about the same, like Paranormal Activity, where it's paranormal, but it's not real paranormal. It's, found footage. That's what I see it as, really. And then you had shit like Saw, and it just seemed like there was very few good horror movies throughout that period. Now, there is exceptions. I'm not saying there's absolutely none, but there wasn't the way it's been the past decade from 2010 to now, because Insidious, definitely started a trend. They had, like, from that franchise, they started off like the film The Nun, the Conjuring series, and Annabelle, just from this one film. And I remember seeing this, on TV as a commercial or a trailer, and just being like right away, totally buying it, and I saw Lynn Shay, who plays Elise, which is like the Zelda Rubinstein from like Poltergeist, the medium, and so when I had saw the trailer for this, and I saw there was like demons and it's ghost and possession, I was like, oh, dude, I'm all in. Even before, like, I saw the movie, and of course, like, I loved it as much as I thought I would. But did you remember seeing any trailers for it, or was this your first time seeing it? Or you said you had saw it way back when, right, or some shit like that?
It took watching the movie and getting to a certain part to realize, wait a minute, I saw this movie years and years ago. I don't think it was in the theater, but it was at someone's house or apartment, wherever the fuck. And I probably was getting really trashed while I was watching it, but I was like, yeah, of course. I was like, I remember this shit. I remember this scene where, like, the kid's in a coma and, like, they go to the house and they set up the round table and they're trying to talk to the spirits and all this stuff, and then she gets taken over and the demons start writing on the paper. I'm like, I've seen this before.
Yeah. Well, a lot of those things, we'll get to it when we get to it, but those are a lot of tropes that have happened before, like, specifically like the Changeling. I think a lot of people, like, I'm sure there was things other than that, but for me, it's like everything was kind of copied off of the Changeling when they do shit like that.
Right, because they did do that, and I remember that they did that in the Changeling, but it's like, I know that I saw a much more modern film where that happened, and I was like, I've seen this.
Mm-hmm. For sure. So, yeah, I remember going to the theater when this shit came out, because, like, it was like I had to see it, and, like, I'm a big movie person, like we were talking last podcast about, like, oh, you have to have hobbies. Like, one of my hobbies is going to the movies. Like, I really look forward to it. Like, I haven't done it recently because there hasn't been anything that I'm looking forward to coming out, like, besides, like, the new James Bond film that I do want to check out, but it's been moved. But I would usually, like, every year I would see, like, okay, what's coming out this year? And I would write down, in April, in May, this is coming out. And you would write down all the stuff. And you would kind of, like, of course, the summer was packed full of shit. And that's when all the Marvel and Avengers films were coming out back then. And the Conjuring films. And I would always kind of, like, write down, okay, this is coming out, I got to see. So I would try and see it, if not on opening day, at some point that weekend when I was off from work. But movies has always been my thing, and now that, of course, you can't go to the movies, and last time I checked, because of what's going on here with the Gabrona.
Guinness virus, or
the
Blue Moon virus, or
the Blue Moon virus, yeah. Like I still make it an event to watch, watch films. Like, do you have any like special thing you like to do when you watch films? Like for me, like I've always have this. Like I'm gonna give you all a little insight on like what I do to have a good time to watch a movie. Like I'll buy the Rico's popcorn. It's already buttered, and it's like if you're trying to find something that tastes just like the movies, you have to use that. And then they sell this oil. It has like a little smiley face on there, and it's called butter oil. And like, cause I always try to find it for years, and you'll hear gimmicks and try to find something that tastes like the movies and stuff that says movie theater butter. And like, no, none of that's the real deal until you try it this way. So anyway, I use the Rico's popcorn. I get that oil. It's it's kind of orangey or whatever. You heat up the popcorn for about 7 or 8 seconds, and then you pour a little bit of oil, as much as you want. If you like real buttery, then you put more butter. You shake it up, get it going, and then you put it in there again for like another 8 seconds. And it's warm, like it's fresh popcorn from the movie. So I usually sit there with my little bucket because I collect the buckets, and I'll watch these films, and I'll usually have some candy with me. Sometimes I'll do nachos, but nachos are kind of heavy. But I like to keep it with popcorn, pizza, and usually a little something to drink. But it's like I'm at the movies and I didn't have to spend $50 to have a good time and eat. You know what I mean? But do you have any kind of rituals that you'd like to do when you're gonna sit there and like really looking forward to seeing something?
I mean, it just depends on the circumstances. Like if I'm at home, like and I'm just whatever I can be. Like for this. To watch this, like I had a lot of that Farmer John's popcorn left over, so I was microwaving all those bags and eating that while watching this.
Hell yeah!
I mean that was cool with me. Now other times, like let's say if it's a Saturday night, and let's say I'm not going out on a date or anything, let's say I'm just home by myself, I might have a couple beers and eat some wings and cheesy bread and watch a movie too, and I'm cool with that too. It's like it just depends on the night.
Yeah, ain't nothing wrong with that. Oh yeah, you can't go wrong with pizza and wings, dude. Just pizza and wings. I don't know, man. It's going to take more of that to get me out of the cave. Anyway, before we get into a hunger craze, Insidious, man. This one's got a star-studded cast, man. They got, Patrick Wilson, who plays Josh. And Patrick Wilson, he's become, since then, a pretty big star. But before this, he had already came out in Watchmen. But since then, he came out in, the Conjuring series and, a little spin-off with Annabelle.
And that is, and I saw Annabelle in the theater. What do you call it? And that was a cool one. But I mean, it was okay. It wasn't fabulous, but it was good enough. I first saw Patrick Wilson in nothing, supernatural or real fictional. It was in that movie. Did you ever see Lakeview Terrace?
It sounds from. Oh yeah, is that what's Samuel L. Jackson or some
That's
shit?
The one.
That's the one he came out in. Yes, I forgot about that. One's great. So did that movie come out before Insidious, or do you know?
Yes, because so Insidious came out in America in April 2011, but Lakeview Terrace came out in very, very end of 2008.
Yeah, I actually saw that after. I actually saw that like maybe a year ago because I'm like a big Patrick Wilson fan because everything he comes out in, he's great. You know what I mean? And I was like, well, let me check it out. It's got Samuel L. and Patrick, and that's a really good movie. That'd be something we should be doing in the future. And that one's almost like a horror movie too. You know what I mean? It's got like kind of stalker elements to it, but. Pat comes out on, like I said, those films, and then Aquaman, he plays a villain in there, so it's cool to see him in that shit, which was a pretty good movie. We might do some other stuff besides horror pretty soon, some Van Damme. Then we got Rose Byrne as Renee, Josh's wife, and she came out in Attack of the Clones, Star Wars Episode 2. She came out as like one of the princesses or whatever in the film Troy. And then she's in the X-Men series like Apocalypse and, Days of Future Past and First Class.
That's where I've seen her.
Yeah, she's like an FBI or CIA, whatever agent. She's in that shit. And then also A Place Beyond the Pines, really great movie that we'll probably end up doing. So she does that. And then we got Lynn Shay who plays Elise. And she's become like a resurrected star. Her brother Bob Shay, who is the producer of what film company, Christopher J.?
Give me one moment with the...
It's all good, dude. New Line Cinema. Freddy Krueger, man. That's her brother.
Son of a bitch!
Yeah, Bob Shay, dude. Bob Shay.
Fucking A.
Yeah, she's the one that plays the teacher in part 1 where, she's like, she wakes up Heather, or I say Heather, Nancy, Heather Langenkamp playing Nancy. When she's having that dream, she's like, why don't you go home and get some rest or whatever.
And see, that's the thing. Like, I thought I had seen her in something before, and now that answers that.
Yeah, she came out in Ouija, which is a great horror film, which, of course, we'll be doing a lot of those films. There's something about Mary, which is Mary's, like, neighbor that has the dog in Detroit Rock City, who's Jam's mom, who's, like, super religious and thinks that Kiss is the devil. So she's kind of been known, not well known, but she's been in some good stuff. But ever since Insidious, I mean, she's just been on a tear. And, like, it's funny seeing, like, an older woman kind of like hold a horror franchise, like on her shoulders, where her and Pat, because Patrick Wilson and her, like, they're both great in everything they do. Then we got Barbara Hershey playing Josh's mom, Lorraine, and she comes out in Falling Down with our good friend, what's that motherfucker's name from Falling Down? Michael Douglas. I was gonna say he's real famous. The Little Rascals, and then Riding the Bullet, which is a okay movie, not a great movie, but it's a Stephen King adaptation to film. And then we got Leigh Whannell, who's like the writer and now like a director. He's done like a lot of shit. Like he's him and James Wan, who's the director. They both always worked on shit together, and y'all know, I know everyone knows the Saw films, so they worked on those, written, directed them together. And then the Conjuring series, and like I said, Saw series. So Dead Silence, that's the other one with the dummies. That one's really crazy.
Oh, I saw. Okay, Dead Silence. I missed it when it actually came out, but I saw it on Netflix like probably 5 years ago. And yeah, that's my kind of movie.
I love it, right? Exactly. And the reason I had saw something like that, I saw it when it actually came out because my stepmom worked for a video rental store. That shows you how long ago, this shit was or whatever, like when that shit was coming out. I think it was probably like, I'm just guessing, maybe 2004-ish?
No, I looked it up. It was 2007.
Okay, so that shit was still coming out, and we were still renting videos back then, even though all the rental places were closing down. But I remember seeing that, and I was like, oh, for sure. And like I remember them bringing that shit home, and I was like totally engulfed in it.
I remember going to Blockbuster all the way to 2012.
Wow, I think the last time I went to rent movies must have been about 2010, 11. I remember going to Blockbuster. Yeah, they were one of the last video stores to actually close down, and they were always giving people kind of discounts, to I guess keep them coming back. But unfortunately, when you got Roku, we talked about it last week. Roku and streaming, it's kind of hard to beat that. You can watch shit for free. Why are you going to pay $3 and have to go out and drive to drop the movie off? And it's just a inconvenience. But yeah, so Leigh Whannell, Specs and Tucker as Angus Sampson as Tucker. So a pretty great cast, man. They got their shit going on there. But the film starts off with who we find out later with Josh asleep, and then I love the fucking music in this film. That violin sound, and it's just like really creepy, and it makes your like hairs on the back of your neck stand up, and it kind of like zooms into this old lady that's in like some kind of window. Now, when you're seeing this again for the first time, are you like, oh fuck? Because I know you're one of those dudes that are like, you don't like evil, of course, no one does, but I know you take it personal. You're like, you son of a bitch.
Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, right away it gets that. You're absolutely right. It gets that knee-jerk reaction in me. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember seeing that in the theater, and like the back of your head, you're just like, oh my god, like you just feel that ugly, nasty feeling, and I'm like, oh fuck that. Like there's a thing about old ladies, and Dead Silence was like the same thing with Mary Shaw. Very similar ideas, and I think he just kind of like transferred that into something new with this film, because I think he knew it worked. It just needed a bigger audience, which he had now, of course. By the way, while I'm going over, how much money did this motherfucker make? From what I remember, like the budget must have been like at the it was like $2 to $5 million, and it made a shit ton after that. Oh,
it did make shit ton, but the Wikipedia says it was $1.5 million budget, and it says box office was $99.5 million.
Can you believe that you put up $1.5 million and you make fucking almost $100 million?
That's the thing, is like it's not anything that hasn't been done before, even in the immediate past right before it. It's just the thing is it's a good, captivating story with attractive actors and actresses.
So Renee wakes up I could say the next day, but she just wakes up after we see that intro, and she's there with her son Dalton. And now there's Dalton Foster, and there's a little baby. I think her name's like Callie or something like that. The kid's
Callie.
Yeah. So she's there, and like, of course, like I've seen this movie like quite a few times. It's one of my favorite horror movies because I love paranormal. And like, of course, once you've seen it, it all makes sense and everything kind of connects and everything's said for a reason. And Dalton's there, and he's there like talking with his mom while they're going through a photo album in this beautiful house. And he's like, where's the pictures of Daddy when he was young, And he's like,
oh, you read my mind.
Go ahead. What do you think about that?
Because I didn't catch that the first time, but when I watched it again, knowing what I knew, I caught things like, your father isn't really good at hanging on to pictures of himself.
Yeah, when I like you just kind of think it's like whatever conversation, but then like again, yeah, when you see it for the second time, you're like, oh, okay. And I laugh when Dalton's all like, like it's really good dialogue, he's like, where's the pictures of me when I was young, a kid? And he's like, like how old do you think he is? Probably like 7 or 8 years old or whatever, if that. And he's just like, when was I a kid? She's like, you're still a kid, He would
have been, because I looked up the actor. He's 18 today. He's going to be 19 in like 4 months. Mm-hmm. So he would have been, about 8 when they filmed it.
Yeah. So yeah, that makes sense. And he asked his mom. He's like, you're old now, and he's like, well, how old do you think I am? He goes, really old. He's like, well, how old? He goes, 21. She's like,
I talk to 21-year-olds now. I think they're kids, man.
Yeah, exactly. She's like, I wish I was 21. And so they have the gradual build up from that point, and it's everything that's kind of like nothing's going on right away, but it's all like a premonition of things that are going to come. Like she's playing her piano, and then she thinks she hears something, and then she goes upstairs because the baby starts crying, and she like just has a bad feeling, like, and the baby's like has the bad feeling too because she's just crying for no reason. But of course we know that there's something going on, but not at that moment. And then she like senses something coming from the attic, and she checks the door, and she looks through the door in the attic. And like I said, watching it a second time, you see all these things, but at first you're just kind of like, oh, whatever, you know what I mean? They're just trying to like, well, maybe there's something's going to happen, maybe there's not. But when you go back to it and you know that there's something is in the attic, that like she does sense it, and you sense that evil. Because I think people that like, not everyone I would suppose, but I think people sometimes they have that sixth sense where they can sense kind of like evil somewhere, or something's not right.
Oh yeah.
And
like a certain friend of ours, hallway and bathroom.
Oh yeah, I guess we should talk about that at the end of the podcast, before, so we don't get too off track. But you remind me when we get towards the end, and we'll talk about something exactly like that before we get too deep into this motherfucker.
But you notice when you talk about the attic scene, remember Dalton is going to go up to the attic too, for whatever reason he's like intuitively being led to it. He goes up there and he sees the furnace, and the furnace lights up. And that's like Home Alone did that effect with the furnace in the basement.
My God, that
for
scared me
comedy.
as a kid.
No, yeah, it did too. But it's like, but Home Alone's a comedy movie. Like here, this is happening, and it's to an even younger character, and it's happening for real.
Yeah, it's fucked up. That's when Dalton takes his bump, like he's going up a ladder, and he does that bump, and you hear. Does he yell or something? Because I know the kids are downstairs, and then everyone runs up there. And he kind of like tells them, because he has like a lantern, he's wearing a cape, and they tell him like, what happened, buddy? Did you fall? Because of course, like parents, they're just like, oh, he fell down doing stupid shit, and everyone kind of goes to bed that night, and then they go wake him up the next morning, and he can't get up, and it's almost like he had a concussion. You know what I mean? Like, you hear stories of, well, people like they get hurt, they go to bed, and they never wake up. So it's kind of like, at first I was kind of really confused, and it takes, we're 20 minutes into the film, and not a lot went on, but when you go back to it, like I said, a second time viewing, you're like, they explained a lot, or they try to give you a lot of what's to come in those first 20 minutes, because it just skips, it says, 3 months later, and because Dalton goes into a coma, and they don't know or they say they don't know what it is or why he's in the coma, or what's the point. And when you first saw it again, or not first saw it again, but when you saw it again for the second time, were you like onto the game of why he's in a coma yet, or?
Well, yeah, I mean, I wasn't sure the first time around seeing it. I'll go ahead and just say this. The 2 weeks ago.
I'll just come out and fucking say it.
Say it. So so don't invite me to help you unload washing machines. But no, no, I mean
that's what it was.
See, yeah.
Yep.
But they're I'll say the first time I saw it was 2 weeks ago, even though I probably saw it like getting trashed at someone's house or whatever. But I'm gonna say, let's just say for argument's sake, for all practical intents and purposes, 2 weeks ago was the first time. Okay, so yeah, I had no idea what the fuck was up with this kid being in a coma. But then you see it again, it's like, okay, I know why it's happening, I know what's going on, I know the game at play here.
Yeah. And then finally, now we're into the meat and potatoes of the shit. Renee's working on a song, like she's playing her gimmick, which will come into play in the sequel, which we'll get to. I know you've gotten started on it, so we will be doing. I think this time around we've usually skipped around franchises, but this time around I think we'll run through like Hulkamania, all the Insidious films, and it'll be our first franchise that we actually complete. There's only 4 of them. So she's singing, and she's got like the little baby monitor there, and she can hear like stuff going on. And like it was really disturbing for me when I first heard it, because you're like, what's there with the baby? You know what I mean? What's going on in that room? And you could hear like, I want it. And you're just like, what the fuck is, and then now, and then the baby starts crying, and she runs up there, and I'm like, man, that's fucking scary. Like if I heard,
that's amplified. That would be scary if this was all happening in a 1-bedroom, modern, wide open, not a 1-bedroom, like a 1-story, modern, wide open house where you can see the rooms ahead of you and all that. But now here, this is in an older house with like 3 layers of stairs you have to go up to get to the baby's room where, oh, by the way, you just heard this creepy voice of someone that shouldn't even be in the house.
Exactly. Yeah, I was like, oh, fuck, this is fucked up. And later on that night, like Foster's there and showing, Renee that he got this award and whatever. And then she's like, Mom, I'm afraid to go to bed or something like that. And she's like, why? What's going on? He's like, I don't like when Dalton gets up at night. And I was like, holy shit, like he's getting up at night, you know what I mean? And then I could, like, when I first saw the film, like I remember seeing it in theaters, like, and Foster's like staring at him from across the hallway because they're in different rooms. And I'm like, I know there's going to be something that's going to go on, and there's nothing that goes on, but like you feel the tension because he like closes the door. He's like, fuck this.
I know, and the kid, the Foster has to say, though, like you said, he's like, I don't like when he walks around at night. It's like, what the fuck?
Yeah, I was like, no. I was like, yeah, that was really fucked up and shit. And then after all that shit happens, that's when they have that little knocking episode. They're going to bed at night, and she, I was gonna say Rose Byrne, Rose. And what's it called? They hear a fucking knocking at night, and I was like thinking to myself, I'm like, now what would Chris do if he's going to bed with his wife, and like you hear a knock, like probably like it's almost close to midnight? I'd be like, what the fuck, you know what I mean? And like the way this film is, like it's done so well because like there's silence and you just hear like da 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 da. You're like, fuck that. I mean, if you hear a knock at your house, dude, like, and it's pretty late, are you like right away going for the baseball bat?
Yeah.
Right? That's what I said. I was like, oh, dude, like, just knocking at night, like, you know how I am with knocking. I was like, dude, and then it's at night like that. I'm like, fuck this, dude. And it's a pretty...
Okay, can I go? Like, it bothered me when I went over to your house on Christmas night. Because, like, I needed to log into someone's Wi-Fi to try and do something on my tablet because that was all I had.
Yeah.
And like, it was probably 10:30 at night. And, like, it bothered me just doing that because I had no way to reach out to you, but I needed to go to somebody's house. And, like, I knew it was, like, that's not something you do. You know, you go to someone's house unannounced late at night, but I had really not a lot of options. And that bothered me because I'm thinking about it from your perspective. I'm thinking, like, if it was me, I would be disturbed by that.
Yeah. Yeah, well, he goes down there, and there's no one there, and he goes back up, and then, like, the alarm goes off, and the fucking door's wide open. I'm like, oh, shit. You know what I mean? Like, what do you think at that point? Because, of course, you think, like, home invasion, and, you know, you're just, but there's nothing there, you know? And I love how they just go, like, doom, and, like, it just does, like, that reverse, you know, wide shot of the house, and you're just like, because that house looks kind of like, you know, evil and scary. But of course, it's not the house that's haunted. It's your son.
You.
And I guess, like, Josh is kind of like wants to, like, distance himself from what's going on or whatever. Like, he doesn't want any. I mean, it's hard to explain. I guess, like, in the back of his mind, like, he does know what's going on, because we'll find out later. And so he's kind of like, just like, if I stay away, maybe, like, this won't, you know, come to fruition, or whatever the case is going to be. And he starts staying late for work, and, you know, during the day, on one of those days, Renee sees, like, a handprint on Dalton's sheets. It's like a bloody, like, claw looking thing, and she throws it at him, like, you know, like, well, you know, explain this or whatever, because he's just trying to make sense of it. He's like, it's not a big, you know, like, I'm just dealing with it in my own way, you know, my own fucking way, you know.
I mean, I'll tell you, as, like, I mean, first of all, with the alarm going off, that was a particularly high-pitched alarm and very obnoxious with the fast pace of it. And as somebody who grew up in a house that had an alarm system, and okay, it would accidentally go off sometimes because people would open a door when the system was armed or whatever. And it's like, that always just gave you a jolt of startling. And then when you have it where, like, it's going off multiple times and you can't locate how someone's getting in or who's getting in or whatever, it's just, I mean, that's going to deprive you of sleep. And so, like, you don't know it this early in the movie, you'll find out later. But Josh knows that there's some kind of negative energy in that household.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But he's distancing himself from because he's uncomfortable being there.
He's playing that game. So after that little argument, like, they sleep in separate rooms, and I'm like, you know, what are you gonna do, Chris, when you have your first argument with your future wife, whoever she may be, and y'all have to sleep in separate rooms because there's tension, dude? What's going through your head?
I'm like, man, I hope we get over this soon. But it's like, that's exactly how you shouldn't handle it. I mean, you should be like, you need to stay together and, like, focus on these problems together as a unit, you know? Yeah,
exactly. And so, like, she wakes up, and she, like, I always want to say Renee, because they both start with R's. It's Renee, and she's she kind of, like, sees the shadow going back and forth, and, like, she's so scared she can't even talk. She's like, Josh, because, like, that like entity's going back and forth, like, on the balcony out there or whatever. And like, when I saw that, like, I always remember seeing it, like, for the first time, and, like, it's going back and forth, like, 3 or 4 times, and then it's in the fucking room, and I was like, oh my god, it scared the fuck out of me. And,
dude, I'm nervous about going to my hallway to go to my bedroom, you know, just talking about this.
Yeah, dude, it's one of those things. I was like, oh my god, dude. I was just, you know, freaked out. And, like, before that, like, when Josh is at school grading paper, I have to grade some test. There's a picture of Jigsaw, the little like dummy type thing from the Saw movies on the chalkboard. For those of you that don't know, if you look, when he's telling her, you're like, oh, I gotta grade some tests or whatever, and yeah, it was just, she's like, you know, what do you want me to do? What do you want me to do? He's telling her, like, you know, before all this shit, when she sees that ghost, he's like, I believe you, but, like, what do you want me to do? And she's like, I want to leave. Now, I have to ask you, you know, if you were in that situation to where you haven't seen anything, but you're kind of like, you've gone through that shit with the door opening, and your wife's like, I want to leave, and there's something in this house, like, you know, let's just say you're able to do it. Are you just leaving the house, or what would your next steps be?
My next steps is like, okay, first of all, if I haven't been detecting any of this, but she has. I'm gonna be like, okay, why do you feel? I want to have a conversation before we do anything. Lay it out for me. Make your case. Why do you feel this way? Why are you so? Because obviously something is disturbing you. Oh shit! There's fucking Peter Steele. I just saw him, like in the Dracula Peter Steele looking motherfucker. Oh my god. Yeah, that's that scene you were talking about. Oh my gosh, that creeps me out even now. But I mean, I really want to have an in-depth conversation. Sell me on why you're so intent to get out of this house. Because I mean, you don't just up and leave. I mean, there's a financial cost to that, and you got to be ready for that. I mean, not to mention all the stuff you got to pack, you got to move, all these things. And I mean, I would want to get a priest involved if there was like a suspicion of paranormal. I would want to get, like, I mean, I know in the movie they just up and move to another house, but in real life, it's not that simple.
They finally move houses, or not finally, but they move houses, right? And they're unpacking, and like right away, we meet Barbara Hershey's character, who's Lorraine, and not Lorraine Warren, but I think it's always cool that they, like, I don't know, maybe they had the idea that they were gonna go ahead and do the Conjuring series with Lorraine Warren, but Josh's mom is called Lorraine, and she's kind of unpacking the shit, and like the mom's kind of giving her. Like, again, when you look back on it after you've seen it, you're like, no wonder she's saying all this, but like, why isn't she saying more, like, of what's going on? If Renee's going through all this crap, she's like, I can't imagine, what you're going through right now, but you're going to make it through, and I can't believe you got Josh to take, to stand still for a photo and all that. And I'm like, this bitch, like, she's not saying anything, after she's going through that crap.
Oh, and can I just say, by the way, just on a little side note here, what a total MILF that woman is.
Oh, Barbara Hershey's fucking gorgeous, dude, and she's like, she's pretty old, dude, but I mean, like, she's still fine as fuck. I'm like, okay, can you imagine?
She's a year older than Ric Flair, and like I said, fine as fuck.
Mm-hmm. Can imagine that lady in her 20s, 30s, even 40s would be unbelievable, because she's probably in her 60s or close to it already, but anyway. So, yeah, Renee's cleaning up the house, and I'm like, I remember seeing this, and I'm like, okay, what's going to happen now? Because she's listening to this pretty cool song on, like, a record player, I think it is, and...
oh, you're getting to my part. You're getting to my part that was in my head for a whole day.
Yeah, exactly. I want to talk about that part, too. So she's going outside to throw out the trash, and she looks inside because the record, like, screeches, and you hear Tiny Tim's, tiptoe.
Oh, okay. So she's listening to, like, this... It's like, I call it Adele type of music. And this is 2011, so that was really popular at that time. But it's that type of music, but pure instrumental, no lyrics. And then she takes out the trash and it scraps that old school record scratch sound. And then and it's, can I go into tiptoe through the window? You hear that?
Yeah, when I heard it, I couldn't help but like it, but be scared at the same time, because I'm like, out of all the songs to play, it's fucking that one, and that freaked me out. And I never ever get, I get scared of movies, but I never have like legit fear. And I remember, like, when I saw this film and saw that part was, like you said, stuck in your head, stuck in my fucking head. I had lived in this 2-bedroom apartment, and it was really weird how the setup was. Like, you would walk through the door, and on the right of you would be the staircase upstairs, and downstairs would be, as soon as you walk in the living room, on the right underneath the stairs was a restroom, and if you keep going straight, there was the kitchen, but you had to turn. And then when you go upstairs, like everywhere, like, to get to anything, you have to turn. Like, you couldn't see it, so it always bothered me. Like, even just like coming out of my bedroom upstairs, I had to turn and I would see just downstairs. You would just see the stairs, and you couldn't see the living room or nothing. You just see the wall down. So everywhere you turn. So after seeing this, I remember my girlfriend at the time. She had to go to work, and she worked at night, and she's like, okay, you have a good night, but don't let the little boy get you. And I was like, I don't know if she knew I was scared, from seeing it already, or she probably had some kind of fear too or whatever, but she had said that, and I was like, fuck. I was like, just stay here. What the fuck are you doing, Anyway, so that night, I'm just, going around the house by myself. And like I went to go take a leak, and as soon as you open the restroom to that one restroom downstairs, as soon as you open the door, there's the mirror in front of you with the sink, and then you turn right real quick, and there's the restroom. But anyway, I don't know. It was, of course, my mind playing tricks, but I had opened the door, and for whatever reason, when I looked in the mirror, I saw the little boy in the mirror. And I've never had that happen to where I freak out or scare myself, but I saw the little boy standing like in the mirror, and I flinched, picked my hands up like if you're gonna get hit and you don't, and like it's like so quick, you're just trying to do whatever you can to like keep the blow from really landing. And I did that, and I was like, oh my God. And I told myself that, because I was like that freaked out, I was like, was that real, or was that just like you freaking yourself out? So it's one of those things that always stuck with me. I've never been like had anything like that happen to me before or after. It was just after this movie, so that's why it's one of my favorites. But yeah, she ends up going back into the house and trying to see that little boy. You just hear him running from like room to room, giggling. Now, if you're in that situation, Chris, what are you doing?
Fucking scream and run out of the house like a scared little girl. I mean, no, and for real, and see, and that's the thing, like anywhere I live, like, especially when I first move in, but even as I'm living there for months, like, I'm always putting holy water around, I put miraculous metals everywhere, because I want to ward that shit off. And if that kind of stuff was going on where I lived, even after that, I'm getting a priest over there.
Speaking of priests, so that's when Josh shows up, and there's a priest there. He's like, oh, this is the first line of a joke. Oh, a guy comes home and is with a priest in his wife. But the mom.
I love that.
Yeah, but the mom's there too, and she starts going over like the whole story about her dream, and like that, like it just kept like for this whole movie, it kept getting better and better. If you've never seen this film, I suggest checking out. You would search something like Insidious Lorraine scene, and she's kind of explaining that she had a dream about being in that new house that they're at, and she's like, I was walking around and I saw y'all were asleep, but I felt like there was someone else awake, and I went down the hallway, and that hallway is like really like sinister looking, because you have the clock at the end of it, you know what I mean? It's just like a straight hallway. And she goes, and I went into Dalton's room, and she's like, but there was something in there with him, and like she opens the door, and then she opens it more, and you see like claw-like hands, in a silhouette, and she's like, I started talking to it, and I said, who are you? I'm a visitor. What do you want? And it pointed at Dalton, and she's like, I could still hear that voice, and then she sees like that red-faced demon right behind Josh's face, and she's like, oh, he's here, or it's here, and then that's when Dalton's room's all fucking flipped around, and he's on the floor, and everything's gone insane.
Unattached to all the machines he had been attached to, they could monitor his vitals.
Yeah, and I'm like, after that, long story short, for that crap, Specs and Tucker, who are like paranormal investigators, like Ghostbusters, they're doing all the readings for the house, and they see that there is, paranormal activity going on in there with their gimmicks. I'm
watching that scene now, and he walks in there just eating a Hot Pocket right in front of him.
I was going to ask you about that. I was like, so what's your favorite Hot Pocket, dude?
Oh, honestly, I'm probably going to go with the Philly cheesesteak Hot Pockets. They have like the croissant crust.
I loved the Philly cheesesteak ones, dude. Those and the pizza ones, they're like I bet you nowadays, because before you would put it in the microwave and it kind of gets like weird looking, but like since we have the air fryer, I bet you we can get it perfect where it's crispy on the outside and warm in the inside, dude. Oh my
Oh
god.
hell yeah, I've done that.
And yeah, you're like, dude, you're preaching to the champ. And then you have like a side of marinara. You just dip that motherfucker in or something. Oh my god, sounds great. Anyway, um, so that's when we meet the star of the show, but she doesn't come in to probably like almost an hour into the film. I haven't time checked it, but at least 45 minutes in or so. And we meet Elise, and she does the whole like the changeling kind of gimmick mixture with poltergeist. But I like when she's like, oh, we did like Specs and Tucker, like we did a thermal reading, we did this, that, or whatever, and we checked the wiring, and she's like, that'll be enough, gentlemen. I don't think bad wiring, is the case here. Like she could already feel, kind of what's going on, and that's when they go to Dalton's room. And she has, like, the same way we were talking earlier about the changeling, to where, like, you remember the scene where they're having, like, the seance and they have, like, the guy writing down what she's saying. Mm-hmm. Like, it's the same thing. Like, she's, like, kind of, like, possessed or zoned out, and she's telling Specs what she sees, and he's, like, drawing out the red-figured, demon. And, like, when I first saw the picture, I was like, holy shit, because he's, like, supposed to be, like, in the corner of the room on the ceiling. Like, when you saw that, were you kind of like fucking like, oh shit, what the fuck is this? Or
yeah.
Okay, yeah.
I mean, it's just that whole thing, and just. But I mean, if we're gonna get to the seance where they're sitting down at that round table in that room, and when I first watched it, I didn't realize that they were in until toward the end of that whole part, where that they're actually in the same room that Dalton was laying in bed in. I didn't realize. I thought they were in the living room.
Yeah. If you don't pay attention, like that they're in there, because she kind of explains like like what she's like. She's like, I know you've gotten to the doctors basically, and I'll tell you what I call it. She explains astral projection, and which is an interesting topic. But check out the movie and do your own reading for that motherfucker. And of course, Josh doesn't believe her, even though all this crazy shit's going on. But he sees like the drawings of Dalton like flying away and all that, and so he kind of like says like, "Well, I do need these people," And then they do have that seance in Dalton's room, and like it's disturbing because before she was whispering and like Specs is drawing, but now she's got like that gas mask thing on, whispering. With Specs having those earphones on, and he's writing down what he's telling her, again exactly like the changeling, and he's writing down what she's saying to him, and it's all like, follow my voice, Dalton, can you hear me? And he's all like, be quiet, or they're gonna hear you, and
mm-hmm.
The man with the fire on his face, and Mom, Dad, help me, help me. I'm like, man, it's like that's scary to hear all that shit, and then like it's all silence, and then you hear like, you bitch, I know who you are, like all the like insults that the demon is telling them, like I guess they know who Elise is, and all that shit, and like I guess Dalton gets possessed for like a little bit, because he, of course, like he's like standing up and he puts his hand on the table and everyone flies around, and all this shit's going on, and that's when Elise is like, leave this vessel now, and all that crap, and it's just a crazy.
But she's a brave woman to be standing up to evil spirits like that by herself.
Yeah, exactly, right? It's like, if you could see all that shit, like I wouldn't be fucking with it. I'd be like, nope, not doing that, man. Just gonna enjoy my Papa John's, But the cool part, and I guess like the dialogue in this film is really, really good, because after that, we have fine-ass Barbara Hershey, a.k.a. Lorraine, Josh's mom, explains to Josh why, she knows what's going on. And she's like, well, I'm the reason I'm such good friends with Elise is because I went to her for, this problem, a long time ago for you.
Mm-hmm.
And then a very disturbing story, probably the most disturbing story in the whole film. And then she has the pictures of it to prove her case as well. And she explains that, you used to tell me that an old woman would visit you at night, and like right away I'm like, oh fuck this, you know what I mean? Like an old woman would visit me at night, and then like right away I thought about like, oh, that kid in the beginning of the film that we see, that was Josh, because they even show like flashes of him closing his eyes and he sees himself like dreaming or whatever. And then she's like, I would take pictures and I saw her for myself. And like my first thought, like the only criticism is like, if I saw pictures of anybody and there's a fucking demon getting closer to it, like I'm making sure everyone that I know knows about this.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like Chris, those pictures that we took last week, there's an old lady getting closer to you. You probably should go see a priest.
Oh, we're going to go, immediately we're going to go talk to Father Charles, and then we're going to see who in the bishopric hierarchy he can refer me to handle this issue. But, that being said, I'll tell you a story, like, yeah, you don't keep that shit to yourself. Like, I'll give you the reverse example, the opposite example. The prior priest at my church, he had gone, back, he had taken a faith pilgrim group, from America, like, to Lebanon to go to a certain monastery of one of our, bigger, more popular saints in our rite, which is Saint Charbel. That's it, Saint Charbel. And they went to like his monastery where he had been all his life and everything before he died. And it's the same place where he had emanated a light when they buried him, and then they dug him up, and he was still uncorrupted, and he hadn't been embalmed or anything, but still was like perfect, like months later. Well, anyway, they're at his monastery, and they're taking all these photographs, and like in a couple of the photographs, like his face is like coming up in the photograph, like just like he looks in like the real photographs they had taken of him when he was alive. Oh, and I'm like, fucking A. And I mean, like, yeah, and I mean, this priest showed us all this stuff, like, and I'm like, wow. And like, yeah, if you're having stuff like that happen in photographs, if there's any kind of thing that you can show someone so they know you're not freaking crazy, yeah, you go talk to somebody about that.
When I call, will you come and visit me? I am the one that sets you free. Eternal life with you by my side.
Okay, so Josh decides to go into the further because they explain to him that he's a traveler and everything like that. And it's like a bunch of weird shit. I can't do it justice explaining every single thing that goes on, because basically what happens, they have that little click-clock thing going on, the little fucking Freddy 3 gimmick to try and get him to fall asleep or be hypnotized. And he like is in this other dimension or astral projecting with a lantern. And like the thing that stands out before he goes into like even further is like he's in his own house and he sees like this couple, and it's like this old man whistling some weird tune that's catchy while his wife's ironing, and there's like the daughter on the couch. And then he goes to the other room and he sees like another daughter that's like they're like weird looking or whatever.
But all these scenes, they're not actually moving. They're like,
yes,
you hear the whistling, but they're in this like frozen catatonic state.
Yeah, they're frozen, but you could tell like they're moving because you could see them shake a little, and it's like dun, 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 like all like that little shit going on.
Yeah.
And like one of the kids, I guess they were twins, like shoots the family. And
yeah.
I'm like, what's the point of this? Like, what's the story? But I guess it's just like evil or spirits that are like trying to possess Dalton, because they explain earlier. She's, and I guess I should have gotten into it, is like Elise is telling him like, your son, he's not, it's not the house that's haunted, it's your son. And there's spirits that, he's a traveler and he's like able to go into this other dimension basically. And he's able to see these spirits, but these spirits have seen him. So now they're like following him, and they're like drawn to him, and they want to be him. They want to be alive. So I'm like, wow, this is like fucking really demented and freaky. When she's explaining it, but she's like, well, there's out of all these spirits, there's one that's closest, like a very malevolent spirit, to taking over his body, and it's that fire-faced demon. I don't know if it's she's talking about the fire-faced demon or the old lady, because he doesn't really say. She's just like, but a more malevolent spirit, And I wonder if they're talking about, like I said, the red-faced demon or the old lady. But he starts going into the further, and then he sees the red door that Dalton had drew on his wall. So he kind of like, makes that connection to it.
Yeah.
And that's when he goes into that room and he finds Dalton into this kind of like palace hell looking thing. And he's like, Dad, and he's like, all right, son, blah, 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 And that red-faced demon's upstairs sharpening up his blades, listening to Tiny Tim. Who would have thought it, right? That Tiny Tim playing in hell. Tiptoe
through the window. And I guess if you hear that song enough, that would be hell. But I mean, no respect. Can I just, my first Tiny Tim memory? I didn't know who he was till he was on Monday Night Raw, in the first year. Mm-hmm. And Jerry Lawler punched him because he called him Dairy Queen.
Yeah, you were talking about that. I was like, what? I still have to see it, but I don't know who Tiny Tim was till this movie. So I was like, well, this guy's pretty interesting. But he finds Dalton. They start making their great escape, and they're running out of there. And of course, for the movie's sake, because it doesn't make much sense to me, Josh is he's running away with Dalton. And towards the end, while they're escaping because they have to find their way out, which is what Elise says, he's like, "Go ahead, buddy, I'm right behind you." And he's slowing down, and then I guess they get lost, and then he sees that old lady from the beginning of the film, and that old lady that's following him. He's like, "You," but we don't see her right away. But he's like, "You," and they cut back to the real world because all the spirits from the further are kind of going into the real world now. So all the people that we saw from earlier are there, and they're being attacked and all kinds of crazy shit. And he's telling her get away from me, get the hell away from me, leave me alone.
Yeah, he had to say that to her 5 times for her to finally dispense,
Yeah, well, so we think, and he's like, leave me alone. And then it zooms out, really cool camera work. And I was kind of laughing because finally everyone wakes up, everything's good, it's all good, everyone's got the Domino's app going and getting the free pizza. Mm-hmm. And Dalton's eating his spaghetti and he's like, "Oh, I'm tired," and whatever. And they go to Specs and Tucker outside and they're talking about "Oh wow, this is really going to be a great book, and this and that." And I was laughing because they have to. It reminds me of you, me, and Mark, how you have to argue about everything because one of them he's like, "Oh, the book I'm going to write, the picture is going to be the pictures are going to be the main selling point." And then Specs is like, "Well, not the main selling point, but I mean, it'll be important, but not the main selling point." Just whatever he can say, keep it because they're back and forth, who's more important, the guy that's, that's got the drawing stuff and all the other crap.
Yep.
But and Josh is selling everything's fine, dude. It's all good, dude. This is my 4th death in the family to try and get a couple of paid days off on work. He's playing that. It's all good, dude. And he hands Elise photos. He's like, "Oh, I guess I don't need these anymore." And when he hands it to her,
that look.
Yes, she senses it, right?
Yeah. She gives him that look, and to me, when I saw her give that look, I thought it was her turning heel, her turning demonic.
Yeah, exactly. It is you're what's going on here, And then she grabs that digital camera and she does the flash. I didn't know it was digital. I thought it was a regular camera until I saw it again, just recently, and I could see that she's looking at something. You could see the image, but you can't really see what's there. And she's she knows something's not right with him, and he really does the Karen blow up, dude. He's like,
mm-hmm.
He's like, "Why did you do that? Why did you do that when I don't like, I don't like my picture." He gets really I'm like, wow, he had a really good blow up. I was like, what the fuck, for being all nice and everything. Why did you do that? Why did you do that? He's like, "You bitch," and he starts choking her. So I'm assuming when when they saw that demon in that other realm, it was the old lady that was talking to her, because they say the word bitch a lot, almost like it's Freddy, And
And I'm also assuming that the next time I check AncestryDNA.com, me and Patrick Wilson are going to come up as like fourth cousins.
Yeah, y'all have the same balding spot too, dude. So don't worry about it, dude. Y'all are gonna be great, dude. You're gonna
And
have
the same flipping out.
Yeah, y'all have the same hair, everything, dude. You and Patrick, y'all are basically brothers, dude. That's the new Nick. So fucking, I'll say Patrick Wilson. So fucking Josh chokes out, what's your fucking name? Elise. But before all that, like everyone hears the commotion and they run in there and they just find Elise like on the couch, like staring, like she's dead, obviously. And they pick up the camera and they see it's an old lady there, the old lady that we see in this entire film. And then Josh comes from behind her and like you just hear like Elise, or you say Renee, and she's like, like, and then it just cuts off, and you're just like, holy shit! And of course that violin, I was like, holy shit, what the fuck just happened here? And I couldn't wait for the fucking sequel.
Yeah, me too. That's why immediately I watched the first like 5-10 minutes of the second one, because like you want to know, like, okay, well, what does this mean? Is Josh like the ringleader of some supernatural demonic thing, or like what's going on?
Yeah, I can't wait to get into the sequels, because I like. It's Insidious is one of those things to where we'll get to it, of course, like I said, but probably my least favorite's the fourth one. But the first three are really, really entertaining. They're all different. Like the 1 and 2 are a continuation of each other, but like completely different films, I think. And then the third one, again, a completely different film, new characters. Well, they have, of course, Elise back, but it's great. It's really good shit. But before we get too crazy into the Mark story, we'll try and squeeze it in. What do you rate this film, dude?
Oh, I love that. This easy 9.
Easy 9. Yeah, exactly. I give this one a 10 out of 10 for me. It's like a perfect film. I watch it all the time. Like, I've gotten to the point where it doesn't scare me anymore. I mean, if I wanted to scare me, I could make it, do it. Just put it on in the dark, make sure the window's open. You're going to be like, fuck no, right away. Love the film. Love everything that Lin Shaye's in, Patrick Wilson's in. Really good shit. Do you want to tell the Mark story about the haunted house that was?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's a house that, a friend of ours, still inhabits to this day, and actually he sleeps in the very room, which was kind of, to me, the epicenter of it. But it's, okay, so there was this house, and he no longer lives there, anywhere near this house, but I always, and you said this too, I always had a discomfort going down that hallway and going into that restroom. It always just kind of felt like a creepy darkness, like an eeriness to it. And then lo and behold, one day I'm over at his house, and this is probably, I think, 2013, 2014. We're there, and he's got this thing, I don't remember if it was like a CPU or like a bass subwoofer or something, that this PlayStation or Xbox controller, whatever it is on. And it falls off that, but it falls sideways off of it, like not straight down like gravity would pull it. And I saw that, and I'm like, it took me a second to process it. I was like, and I looked over and said, that did not just happen.
Yeah.
I was like, that completely violates the laws of physics. That did not just happen. And it was just like, it just drove me crazy. And then, so probably August 2014, let's get him there. And his laptop is, I saw him turn it off, and I saw him unplug it. And it's off, and we were in the living room watching TV and, like, talking about different songs. And some of the songs we were talking about, the laptop somehow turned back on and started playing the music we were talking about.
Yeah. And I had a similar, before that even told me about any of those things, like it wasn't anything like, it's always cool and scary at the same time to hear people tell these stories and connect the dots. Like before they told me any of that, I had told the dudes, because we had went swimming one of those days. He had a pool in the backyard, Mark, and I went inside to go change, from that. And like I went to the restroom and I'm there drying off, changing, and like I just had this ugly feeling, and like I said, like I always tell people this story if they want to talk about ghosts or paranormal. And like I live by myself, like I'm not afraid of going to rooms or like all of a sudden freaking out. Like I live by myself, I'm fine, no problem. But when I was there, and my buddies are there, right? Why would I be afraid at my own house alone and then be afraid at my buddy's house when they're all there? Like it doesn't make sense, right? Like you would think like if you're a coward one place, you'll be a coward everywhere. But and I was there and I just felt like someone was watching me, I guess is the best way to explain it. And I was like, I better hurry up. So I'm kind of like, rushing out of there. And then I walk out the restroom and I turn and I feel like someone's following me, like almost like making me feel like I need to run out of this hallway. And I don't know if I told y'all that day or like later on or whatever. I was just like, man, dude, when I walked out of Mark's restroom, like in the hallway, I felt like something was following me. And then that's when y'all were like, oh, dude, y'all did that rave voice, dude, and then y'all start telling me y'all shit. And I'm like, really? Y'all have had that shit happen to you? Because Mark's had some really fucked up, scary shit happen. And like, I know Mark doesn't bullshit. Like, he's the first guy that'll like, if you tell him any story, he'll be like, okay, Joe, okay, Chris, But for him to say like, nah, dude, like I've woken up and there's been like a shadow, silhouette outside my door. I'm like,
Yeah.
And like again, like for some, like I know he's not gonna bullshit or try. Like he doesn't play games like that. He don't got time. He don't got time for that, dude. He's too busy making money, dude. So for him to like say that, I was like, oh shit. Then what I was feeling was real,
I know someone who said they've felt a cold hand touching them in that house, like, and no one's there.
I believe it, dude. That's one of the, like I said, there's very few times where I actually feel something. Like, of course, like I told you, like, oh, I freaked myself out or whatever. But that time, I just had that ugly feeling. So, maybe soon we'll have Mark talk about his shit again. The fucking old lady at whatever street that he was on. But I hope you guys enjoyed the podcast, and we'll see y'all on the next one.
Peace.